I know you want me. You know I want you. You know you want me. I know I want you.
That's the
Rumba
intro to the
hee.
episode.
Rumba hoo. Rumba hee.
I haven't heard that song in a
Rumba
long
hoo.
time.
I know you want me. You know I want you. I know you want me. You know I want you. I had some
Oh,
Doritos
baby.
and now I'm feeling all happed up, man. I drank green tea all day.
Oh, man. You better use the bathroom.
I did. Twice. I'm evacuating more often than I need to these days.
Yeah, I'm not cutting this when we do the recording. It's starting.
I hate you. What?
It's starting with the song.
Hi there, guys. Welcome to our new special episode of Cult of Comics
going.
podcast. He said that's the intro. I'm doing it. Let's do it. Fuck
All
it.
right.
I can't
All
cut
hail,
that song.
welcome.
It was too good.
I hate you. This is a very special episode that we've been kind of putting off for a little while, where we're going to be covering some of the majestic majesty that is the Last of Gods. The Last
The
God.
Last of Gods.
The Last of Gods. It's The Last God. Book 1 of the Fellspyre Chronicles by Philip Kennedy Johnson. Art by...
Riccardo Federici.
Thank you for saying that correctly. And who's the inker?
Sunny Go.
Sunny Go, yeah. He's been on a lot of stuff that we are really big into, but...
The
we
colorist is
decided-
Dean White, if you're interested.
I actually am, so thank you for that. So,
The
this
cartographer.
is... I fucking hate you. We wanted to do a special episode about this one, specifically because this was such an interesting and very unique story, especially one that's published through DC. It's not something that you really anticipate. It's a world that was created from the ground up, from a very Dungeons and Dragons-esque sort of feel, with characters that are very familiar in a certain sense, but it's also in a world that we're not familiar with at all. Does anybody want to take over explaining what the world is or what's the main plot of the story is?
Sure. I mean, this is
Captivate me.
completely independent from anything else in the DC universe.
Absolutely.
This
This
is-
is
As far as it's concerned, this is a creator-owned series.
absolutely. This is a black label title, which means that it is up to the creator to do what they will, very much like what happened with Vertigo, if Vertigo was still around. That being said, the difference I would say is that the Vertigo editorial is not here, meaning that creative processes and approval out the window entirely. So as far as we're aware, this is just a new grounds up way for DC to put out some very interesting titles that aren't superhero related, or if they are, they don't have to be directly tied to the main universe.
Yeah, well, I think this is the first, if only, non-superhero title from Black Label.
Yeah.
We've got Sweet
They
Tooth
have-
returns.
Yes, they have reprinted some
And-
stuff, continuations of others, but this is the very first creator-owned, completely unique take from DC's Black Label that exists as it stands today.
Yeah.
And
Somehow
I
this made it
wonder-
onto Black Label and didn't get picked off by Image or...
Yeah,
Boom,
I'm really
somebody.
curious what the rights to this comic look like.
That's something that we're probably going to have to look into a little bit later. I am actually also curious
Yeah.
about that. Curious about that
We
as well.
can
Yeah.
we can talk about that when we talk about Chapter 12, because it talks a little
Cool.
bit about that. There's an end user agreement at the back of issue 12.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So this is the
Go ahead. Yeah, please.
all right.
Take us
So
away.
this is the Last God. We basically have two parallel stories going on right now. So you've got 30 years in the past, where a team of heroes have banded together and killed the last remaining god. The gods, several gods, begotten from, one major god created everything and then created minor gods. And now all of the other gods have died except for one. And they basically slayed this god that was basically
Yeah,
a
Mol
zombie horde.
God of the Void.
Yeah, God of the Void that basically created these monsters that spread.
The Plague of Flowers, I believe it's
Yeah,
called.
the Plague of Flowers. They basically
Which,
created
by the
these
way, I gotta
zombie
just
plants.
say really quick. That's exactly what I was gonna say, but I also just wanted to say this is the most fucked up, fucking evil, like metal looking.
Like
Ah,
body
shit.
horror.
Yeah, and I'm so for that. I mean, I'm I'm covered in a lot of tattoos, but the one on my left arm is more specifically tied to that Lovecraftian body horror cultish kind of style stuff, and that shit is my jam. So seeing that, I was just like, God, the brutality of the whole thing is just, man, and the art is really enhanced.
So yeah, this is pretty graphic. We'll get into the
one
shot. We'll get into the one shot later, which is just a step above this. But anyway, so we got 30 years past. The heroes have gone on their journey and vanquished the last god, the name of the story. And then we go 30 years into the future where we have a new group of heroes where
oh my god,
it
the
seems
series
the
is
last
called
god
Last God
has...
because it's about the last god.
Oh my god.
The last god has returned, the Plague of Flowers has returned, and now they have to go back and re-kill the last god.
The thing that I thought was most interesting about the story parallels was the relationship between not just the team dynamics, but also the fact that they are going towards that same goal of the Black Staircase, which in some cases you could say is a metaphor for the pointlessness of war or conflict in general, but in specific, the fact that they both end up going down essentially the same roads, but leading to different results, I thought was a really brilliant take. Philip Kennedy Johnson is a really fantastic writer. I don't know of anything else that he's ever written prior to this. I think this is his first thing that was published, as far as I'm aware.
He did an Aquaman annual a few
years
years ago.
He's done so far.
That's what every time I say that, you always correct me, so thank you for that. He did an Aquaman story.
Fairly mediocre. So it's then interesting for him to come onto this and deliver such a groundbreaking, incredible story. And as well, within the last couple of weeks, we had him release a Superman story in Worlds of War, which again was so good. Incredible.
Absolutely.
So it's strange, but my own experience to him before was this mediocre Aquaman book. And that's why I didn't pick this up to begin with.
I picked it up because of the cover, honestly. And I picked it up because I've been, as you know, I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for some time now. I'm fairly new to it, but I got really hooked really fast. As for the context right now, as of recording this, it is Sunday, February 7th. It's Super Bowl Sunday. I didn't even realize it was Super Bowl Sunday until like a minute ago, and I realized that I'm not going to be able to order any food tonight because it's all going to be cold because Super Bowl football. We're not doing that. We're going to be covering some fantasy stories. That's the kind of nerds we are. I love it. I was actually really surprised at myself for getting it, but I mean, it's a cardstock cover, so immediately that kind of hooked me in. But the art in itself, especially the cover, you just look at the cover and you just think,
I'll give a shout out to the cover artist Kai Carpenter, because these are all beautifully painted covers.
Insane.
Like the colors, gorgeous. Like the artwork is incredible on the covers.
And the artwork stays pretty similar to, what's going on inside here. Federici's artwork.
Yeah, like the coloring and like style is very similar, but it's a much more like painted style.
Yes.
So for the YouTube portion of this, Sean, would it be possible for us to put up the map that Philip Kennedy Johnson has had created for this?
Yes, we can do.
Just like on display?
Yeah.
Cool. Because I got to tell you, I'm always impressed whenever I see anybody do this. Obviously, I saw somebody break this down for me recently and say, you can just draw a map and then say, okay, well, this is Flugun, and then over down here is Goffelbobble. And then you could build the lore around that and just make a whole bunch of shit up. And that's partially true. Yeah. But making an effort...
They hired a cartographer.
Yes.
Give a shout out to the cartographer's name.
That is Jared Blondo. Blondo.
So for those who don't know, there actually is a website as well that you can go to basically do your own personal cartographies. You can create a map for your D&D adventure. You can do it for the storytelling experience that you want. I do personally really love that they actually hired an actual cartographer for this instead of just doing this on an app. Don't get me wrong, the website's really cool, but the fact that they actually had someone who is a creator do this just adds to that flavor of this so much more. This is a book that people were sleeping on all year long.
Definitely, because
I was hooked from the first issue. This is one where the issue 1 hooked me in. They set up the entire story. They threw down the gauntlet. They said, this is the goal.
Yeah, because
Yeah, absolutely.
I only picked this up when issue 12 came out. I binge read it all in one go because you guys have been telling me for months like this is an incredible book.
Yeah.
And
Because
so
like just right from the
I read
beginning, you're
this-
just like,
yeah, and I read this digitally, and then I was like, holy shit, this is a sick story. Like I'm gonna track down physicals for these because it's something I want to physically own. And
I
like,
am-
yeah, I've still
We've
got a few
got
more
this-
to find, but
We've got this whole map, a map of, you know, I think it's probably about the same size as the world of the Lord of the Rings. Kind of a similar setup.
I would say that, yeah.
But we only explore, you know, a small portion of this world. There's many other sections that are mentioned but not explored. So
yeah, because even if you look at the map,
this is book one of the Fellspyre Chronicles. So
yeah, and even if you look at the map, you can see at the top it's got the Riverlands, which aren't really on the map. So this map isn't the whole land.
Yes, right.
Guys, I gotta interrupt this really quick
Go for it.
and just announce this really quick because I am dead wrong about it's not just Aquaman. He has also done Planet of the Apes When Worlds Collide, New Year's Evil from DC Universe, Dog Days of Summer, War is Hell, New Talent Showcase 2018, The Power of the Dark Crystal with Simon Spurrier, interestingly. Kong, Gods of Skull Island with artist Chad Lewis, Adventure Time Comics, Smoketown from Scout Publishers, Warlords of Appalachia with artist Jonas Scarf, which got hyped up by James Tynion IV, who we are absolutely in love with, and Last Sons of America with artist Matthew Dow Smith. I've never even heard of most of these.
Yeah.
Damn, I'm gonna post this into the chat because Warlords of Appalachia looks fantastic. Go ahead.
There goes my wallet. Yeah. So we gotta. This comic maintains a pretty good structure. We see a bit of 30 years past. We see what's considered the present, and they follow very parallel paths. They're going to kind of the same locations over and over again. We get some of the same relationships between the, you know, there's lots of parallels to be drawn between then and now.
Yeah, the way the sort of flashback story and present day story mirror each other is masterfully done. The way he
and
tonally
they're
matches,
still very different.
Yeah, there's a lot of different character dynamics going on, and as well, there's mystery set up in the like in the past that we're getting answered in the future, as well as mystery we're getting in the future that's being answered as we travel through this journey in the past.
Because we're finding out that as we go on, we find out that the heroes of the past were not so noble.
Yeah, and they lied about a lot.
We find out how flawed these characters really are. And then along with the present day heroes, you know, the next generation, we have some members from the original group that are traveling with them, and they meet up with old members.
I want to say this really quick. I feel like that there is a very important piece of the storytelling, which is the corruption of power, not just with the original hero, whose name escapes me. He would later become the king.
Tyr.
Thank you, King Tyr. Not just with him, but also with his wife, the corruption of power and recognition of the new hero for the 30 years later story. It's the corruption of power with the fairy folk character and how that leads into the follow-up and the ending. It's an interesting theme that is present throughout the storytelling experience, while also dealing with subject matter that I really wouldn't expect with a fantasy story. You've got slavery, you've got persecution, obviously sexism. Well, I would say that there's a bit of sexual assaults throughout the storyline. I guess I don't want to say that it's a prominent part. I don't want to put people away, is what I'm saying. I don't want people to think that that's such a...
It's part of a character's progression, and he is a character who is he is a piece of shit.
Absolutely. Yeah. I also want to point out really quick that this is not a character that actually graphically does it. So there's no graphic scene
it happens
and anything like
off
that.
screen.
Yes, absolutely.
But he is established to be a piece of shit
almost
character.
Immediately that, you know, our King Tyr comes from not so noble backgrounds. He was, you know, a Viking, a raider, you know, pillaging and plundering cities.
You know what? I have to say this really quick. That introduction of his first, like when he was first raiding, that still stands out to me. Like the him going into the hut and then leading up to the mountain. I don't know why that sequence like captivated me so much, but that's something from that very beginning of the series that I think about all the time.
Yeah, that was the opening to issue 2.
Issue 2, thank you.
Yeah.
You're on top of it for this video.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
Continue.
So on top of the story, we get the map, and every issue has some back matter. They've put a lot of work into this because
it's
not just one page of stuff. We get 4 or 5 pages of they've manufactured documents to people talking about the events.
He wants to be in the video with Dad.
So we get like some fables, we get some history, we get songs, we get poems. Like we really, there is a lot of content in.
It's good auxiliary information to what's going on.
There's a lot of, you could just have one small backstory for a character, or oh well, this is one small bit of lore, but instead it was, let me put all of this together to tell the story. Let's make a poem, let's make a song, let's make a sonnet, and use
just for
that.
example, on issue 2 there's 6 pages of back matter.
Yeah, there is.
There's
I forgot
a
3-page
about story, a 2-page poem, as well as a page full of a song, but even gives you the notes so you can play it yourself.
Yes.
And the lyrics.
We've got a whole book of back matter, a Tales from the Book of Ages, which is just an information booklet, and also functions as a
D&D source book.
Yeah,
D&D source book, fifth edition compatible.
Which, if you guys are not playing right now, you guys absolutely need to be playing right now. I've created way too many characters for D&D for this, and I have nobody to play with right now.
We're gonna have to do a campaign of some sort.
Something.
Yeah. So
yes, I'm down.
Tons of information in this source book.
So I want to say that anybody who's a fan of fantasy in the first place, you could say, okay, you're probably going to enjoy this, but this isn't your traditional, this isn't Tolkien. This is a very, very dark world.
Gothic.
That yeah, you know what, for structure, I'm going to say, yeah, why not? I'm not going to argue with that. I would say that there's a lot of this that has heavy themes with it that could have been overdone. I feel like there's some writers, creators in general, who would want to make something that was really overly intense just to be edgelords. This is not that case. If it's not the context of racism and slavery, if it's not the context of power corruption leading into sexual assault or sexual assault behaviors or things of that sort, it's not preachy, but it deals with the themes in a way that it makes you care. It makes you believe that it's genuinely happening, that these characters have those feelings rather than just being two-dimensional characters that are just mimicking emotions. And it creates some new elements of fantasy that I don't really think are very present. It does take some of the familiarity. You have elves as a dragon.
Different types of elves.
Yes. I think the thing that I was a little confused about was the title of ferryman with the king of the elves. Did anybody else have an issue with that? It was a
little confusing because they are the Elva, but then
Elva,
she's the ferryman.
But ferrymen are like one tribe of the elf.
So help me out here, because I feel like what that means is that in this Elva culture, that gender is not something that is necessarily important to them. Would you say that you would agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Probably.
Okay. And
so they've got a female leader.
Yeah.
Is their king.
Their language, is that actually invented by Philip Kennedy Johnson himself, or was that something that he had found?
I would imagine it was created by him. I don't know for sure, though.
There isn't that much that has actually spoken, but I know that there's a lot of back context in some of the back last pages that isn't translations or anything, but just little flurries for the storytelling experience. I'm looking it up 1 second.
But yeah, if I would say this is sort of a little more like Lord of the Rings mixed with some of like the fantasy elements of Lord of the Rings mixed with like the mature tones and character traits as like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Because Game of Thrones, while fantasy, it didn't really delve into like the mystic, like magic and dragons and all that stuff. It did have dragons, but like
a lot of the
not a lot of magic.
Elven like language, or maybe it's just the spells, revolve around like singing. Spells or songs. They're almost, well, I'm not sure if this is going to come through here or not. No, it's not. But it's basically like a line on top, and it looks like music notes that are connected.
You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. That's a really beautiful take on that.
Yeah.
In an interview, when asked about what inspired the story, Kennedy Johnson said, honestly, the spark that got the whole process started of The Last of God being created was a little poke from my editor, Johnson. Johnson said, Amadeo Torturo, his editor, had worked with him on an Aquaman before, and apparently he's a huge tabletop gamer, loves D&D. When he's not doing comics, he's doing that.
Yeah.
At some point, he made the jump from the superhero books over to Vertigo and Black Label, and he reached out about doing another project over there. So they had talked about a couple of pitches at some point, and he was like, have you ever thought about doing a sort of horror story in an epic fantasy world? And apparently, according to him, he said, I mean, what are you going to say to that? It's almost a dream come true. The only reason he hadn't pitched something like that, he says, is because he would want to do something really huge, something really big. If you're not the Rick Remenders or Ed Brubakers of the world, asking them to take a chance on this gigantic epic story seemed like an easy no. But Amadeo really thought we can get across the plate. And I was like, quoting him, man, if you think we can get away with it, I would love to do that. I always try to tell stories that matter to me. Just kind of dress them up in a comic booky way. I'll make it fun and interesting and exciting, but still with the stories underneath that mean a lot to me personally. I love it.
Yeah. That's a good take.
In chapter 5, we get this kind of backstory on the gods and how their world was created.
Yeah, they gain access to the
We see some of these gods, and they're just like eldritch horrors.
Yes. It's exactly the word that I would use.
We're almost getting to like H.R. Geiger level horror.
It's really funny you say that because he's actually
horror.
going to be doing the Alien book that's coming out next month.
Right. We're all getting that.
Yeah.
Oh, God,
I'm excited.
Yes. Salvador Roca on art? Are you kidding? Yes.
And so by the end of issue 4, issue 5, we've basically got the whole team together. Most of the team. We pick up, 1 or 2 more team members, but we've got the whole team, and we basically have the representation of the next generation. The inheritors of each of the different heroes from the original group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one thing that's interesting is there's a character we get told about in the present day story. Harkon the...
Hakon,
what's his title?
Destroyer.
I don't think it was Destroyer.
He's not a destroyer. He is a protector of the fairies, basically, the fairy people.
Yeah, the Fae.
But we get
The
told
Fae.
in the present day that he betrayed them in the past.
Oh, right. We do get told that early on, but it turns out
that's,
in
I think,
actuality...
first issue we get told in the opening scene. We got told he betrayed them.
There's a lot
he's
of
almost
moving
like-
parts.
Yeah, he's almost like a blacksmith or like Hephaestus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Hakon the Shamed. Once named
Shamed.
Hakon the Peerless before his heart turned black with treachery.
Which, if you really think about the context of this entire story, that's just the most evil fucking thing you could do to this guy.
And this is something we get
I-
established in page 4 of the story. And then that we build up to that point in the story, and this does take a lot of turns. Like, as we said before, these heroes of old aren't really good guys. They were bad people and didn't do their job properly. And they went back and took all the fame and glory from it and lied about the story.
So I just looked into this. It looks like he did, in fact, create a series of languages for this book.
Fair enough to him. Like, that's a hard job.
Can you imagine?
No.
The patience this man must have. I'm not worried about the gaps in this, by the way. We can just like cut those little blips out, so I'm not too worried. He said that he wanted to create something that didn't feel fake. If somebody asked a question about an issue, like, well, with a certain point in the storytelling, in the lore, he wanted it to have an actual reason behind it, or a story point. Yeah. He said that he wanted it to have a beginning and end, like start with his year 0 and then here's the year 3000, just like as an example. But he said in specific, he did not want it to be some sort of a story that felt like a copy of others, and it wanted to feel unique and like it was actually created.
It does feel inspired by others.
Absolutely. He said that he was inspired by that Tolkien, C.S. Lewis kind of style of storytelling and fantasy, but that it was something that he wanted to do by himself, obviously. It does still feel very much like a D&D campaign in a lot of ways, but it's 100%. Done in a way that
I'm sure they tried some stuff out. Maybe they, role played a little bit to, get this whole story written.
I mean, I'll tell you this right now. Of the stuff that I've played, this feels darker than most of the campaigns I've played.
But you've got a lot of like the typical archetypes, like you've got the warrior, Viking, strongman. Mm-hmm. You've got the elven archer. Mm-hmm. You've got the mage. It is using the cleric.
Yeah.
It's got these traditional archetypes. And it's
absolutely.
I mean, that's what you're gonna see in the source book.
The source book, yeah, which I do need to actually get.
Yeah, so do I. I need to track one down.
It shouldn't be too hard.
We've got the different enemies, their stats. Let's see. Oh, it was farther towards the back. Basically describes each of the different races, playable subclasses. Here's the different races. The Duero are dwarves, the Doric are, created beings, Aelva, so anyway, they go across the adventures, they retrace their steps for the most part. They're basically going along the path, witnessing the wrongs that have occurred and righting some.
Yeah, the way the stories mirror each other and the way that these new heroes are learning from the previous one's mistakes through the story, it is incredibly done.
Absolutely.
And like one thing I want to talk about is the main character, whose name I want to say Eyvinder, but it's something like that.
I believe it's pronounced that way. Yes.
Yeah. He was raised a slave, and he's been raised on these stories of these heroes, and he's always aspired to be them. Mm-hmm. And he goes through an interesting character journey where he realizes these heroes he's worshipped his whole life are pieces of shit.
Mm-hmm. I think that there's another portion of this that was very... I don't want to say political, but because I don't think that's accurate, but I think that it's an interesting social parallel context, specifically with his ears, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, that's revealed like issue 1.
Yeah, very early
but
on.
They don't they don't explain it. Like, I didn't really sort of catch what they were implying until it was explained.
They were showing that he was, he had some Elven in him. Mm-hmm. He had the pointy ears that, he was like half human, half Aelva, and they had, mutilated his ears to make him look full human. Like, you can almost pass as a human. We're going to, cut down your ears until, you look like you have human ears. You don't have.
At this point, I'm going to pause, because if anybody is interested in finishing this book and hasn't yet, and we haven't hyped you up enough, then there's something wrong with you. But you should go and read it right now, because right now we're going to get into the spoiler territory. Now.
No.
So, in specific, the context... I mean, I don't know if they're necessarily Aboriginal kind of creatures, the Aelva, but it kind of seems inspired by that, and this idea as a second-class race of people. So, the context of having Tyr declare, as you discover him being the father of Ivander.
Yeah.
Okay. I thought
You know
it
what
was
I'm talking
more,
about?
I was thinking more like slavery in the U.S.
Well, that is kind of what I'm still thinking about. That's it's still tied to what I'm saying.
All I
I
was
guess what I'm saying
thinking
is
was Bobby B from Game of Thrones, with his dozens of bastards spread across the country.
that actually
Yeah.
I was thinking of that a little bit too.
Yeah.
So when the queen discovers, as I never understood if it was Cyanth or Kyanth. When
Science,
she
I'd say.
okay,
I
when she
read it as
discovers
Cyanthé.
Cyanthe.
That's how I
Something
read it.
like
but
that.
It's hard reading these like fantasy names.
Yeah, we
But
gotta
yeah.
get like some audio interview with Johnson where he says the names.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess that will sort of take us on to the Songs for Lost Children issue.
Yeah, we can jump
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, just while we're
'Cause
talking about
from-
his origin in this.
Well, I think in issue 1, it's basically heavily implied that Avender is probably Tyr's son.
Yeah,
Oh, it's directly
100%.
said.
Yeah. Like, you definitely have this feeling that it's not really addressed until much later. But the extent to what Tyr has been doing, on the side is, revealed in this Songs of Lost Children.
Absolutely.
and this was an incredible one shot. Like the art was brilliant. Written by Dan Waters and art by Steve Beach.
Mm-hmm.
This artwork
it's-
I loved. It's so
It's rougher, but
terrifying.
it's just
Yeah.
as good.
Yeah.
it's much more gothic and much more sort of fairy tale medieval looking.
Yeah.
I
Like, it
would say it's not
perfectly
rough
suited
like
the-
yeah. I would say that it's not rough like Jock.
No,
But I would
it's
say
a
that
completely
it's,
different kind of rough.
Mm-hmm. But it still felt intentionally rough in a way. Not it,
Yeah,
it didn't feel like
it's
it
dark
was...
and a little grotesque,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
whereas
And it's
Jock is very
fine.
scratchy.
In the beginning, they're just, they're on an adventure to a city, a small town.
Well, who?
Cyanth and
Exactly.
one of her handmaids,
Mm-hmm.
Nikeo.
So much.
like hair.
This is fucked up to laugh at, but there's so much child death in this.
This was a
There's
dark
so much
fucking issue.
child death.
Yeah. Kids,
Just-
people disappearing from the village.
Got dead
being-
babies on my left
being
hand. I've
visited
got
by
some dead,
ghosts.
some on my right, and in my fucking head, dreaming of it. Now this is how I drop
We
my
got
SoundCloud.
We got to that page where this little kid comes out of the woods and he's like, "Hello, I'm a very scary monster," and he's like talking to the queen, and then he runs off. That was when I was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
Like, this reminds me of something out of like The Witcher or something.
Ah.
Like, this is going to go so dark.
I'm happy that you said that because The Witcher is still to this day my favorite fantasy world. It's just different. I love it. And that it was immediately what I thought of, walking along the roads and the kid with a mask. I don't know what it is about it, but I gotta go play that game again.
Yeah, it was just so dark. I saw that and I was like, "This is gonna be fucked."
Well, when you get
Yeah.
to the nest,
And it is. Oh,
Yeah, geez, that
The-
body horror. This
There's
series
so
is
much body
grotesque
horror.
and
it's
disgusting.
Yeah.
obnoxious.
I mean, I'm not a dad, so I mean, the whole like concept of dead children doesn't hit me nearly as hard. I don't know what it must have been like to be a father.
I fully
and read
support
this.
it.
I have no idea.
The more dead children, the better.
I hate you.
I'm
As you say
pro-abortion.
with the dad in the chats.
I'm pro-abortion, not pro-choice. Pro-abortion. Kill your
There's
kids.
for abortions for all.
Oh, my
Abortions
God.
for your left, abortions on your right.
It's so disgusting.
But
It is
yeah,
really
it's-
fucking brutal.
It's basically a shapeshifter creature that do they give it a name?
I think they
Grendel.
did.
Grendel. That's
They
mentioned
called it
in
a
one of the
Grendel?
back matters.
Really?
Yeah, they
called
call it a
Grendel.
Grendel.
The poem in issue 2's about the Grendel, I think.
Well, because the famous backstory about the Grendel is
Beowulf.
a creature that. Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
It showed
Yeah,
up
look at
in
you, you're on top of things.
Once and Future that I've been reading by Kieran Gillen and Dan Mora. Grendel
The
and Grendel's
Beowulf
mother
story
showed up.
is the Beowulf story with Grendel is one that I think is not. There's only ever been one time where it was accurately portrayed, and it was in that shitty CG movie. Unfortunately,
Yeah, I remember that.
it was weird. It's interesting that they called this a Grendel because when I picture a Grendel, I don't picture a body horror type creature.
Well, it wasn't
I
a
picture
Grendel, it was a Grindel with a Y. So slightly different, similar name though.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but this is full on body horror. Like, there's one bit where its head like splits and starts like there's
the Grendel
like eyes and
or the
teeth.
fact of what the location they've traveled to is.
Yeah, because it's in like a massive bird's nest.
Yeah, but the reason all these kids are here.
Yeah. Because they're all fucking bastards or orphans.
They're all Tyr's bastards.
Yep. And she doesn't
Every
even
single one
realize
of them is one of his offspring. They just send every single child to live over here and be taken care of.
Because he can't keep it in his pants. He's just laying down some of that king plow.
Damn it, Baratheon.
The story of Ivander being of mixed race and being denied the throne hit really well for me. When I read that, I remember going, oh, and that feeling, I could have that all the time in a story and I'll never get tired of it. But if I could have that revelation, not the cheeky, overly forced twists or whatever, but the stuff that makes you go, oh.
I really liked his character's ending in this story.
I think this baby
we'll get
is
to that
Evander.
eventually, but yeah, the baby in the story is Evander.
Mm-hmm.
I
don't think it's directly said. It's implied though.
It's heavily implied.
The handmaid, it's her child with Tyr, and she's going to flee the kingdom. She'll either go north or into the slave cradles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is the thing that I was confused about when they said slave cradles, because I thought that he was raised in the slave cradles. So I was like, oh, it was a choice. I guess I just didn't expect that.
Keep him safe from the king and queen.
Yeah, safe from the king and the queen. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why, because the way this was released in between issue 9 and 10, I believe. And it was issue 10 where we sort of find out about
his
Evander
relationship.
Yeah. This is where
parentage.
Hakan finally enters back after 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a broken man. He's scarred. He's, crippled. Can barely move.
Has one fae.
Let's mention how he got there. In the flashback series, we have oh god, what's the witch's name?
Oh god, I can never remember her name.
The younger one or the older one?
Technically, she's both.
In the flashback.
Well, one's like
Skull.
A clone.
Copy. A vessel to kind of take part of her soul.
Right. But in the flashback story, we have Skull, who is commander of the mysteries of the Guild Eldritch.
Right.
And they go to, I can't remember the location's name, but they find he's like an old sort of like powerful magician, and she finds an artifact that lets her see the future.
Mm.
And she sees that the only way they can defeat Mol. I'm really bad with names.
Mol Utep.
Mol Utep is if they kill all the fairies, because his power is directly linked to theirs. He is the dark reflection of their power, essentially.
And this power is severely aged her, because they were in their 20s or so.
Yeah.
And it's been 30 years, so you'd be about 50, but she looks 80.
Ancient. So. Absolutely.
But the only way they can...
Schiff is the vessel.
Yeah. But in the flashbacks, they have to kill Haakon because he's protecting the fairies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The fairies are a part of the gods.
Yeah. They were attempting to make a big compromise by, instead of directly trying to take on the last god, Molotep, they wanted to just be like, oh, well, we'll just fight Haakon. We'll just take out the fairies. Like, in that way, we can take the glory, the power, and move on. Then they go back and
because they were kind of like, they were his pathway into the real world, kind of. They were what gave him that link. They were the bridge.
There were other gods at some point, and they established the backstory. I don't remember the context of why. What's up?
they all just sort of died out eventually and
They
gave
they
birth to
basically
different races.
chose that it was their time.
Right. They sacrificed themselves essentially, right?
Yeah, like as they died,
Right.
like one god, when they died, they became the fairies, and like they sort of
All the
gave birth to
gods
different
came
races.
into, their world except for Mul Utep, who was in the void. He was trapped over on that side. That's why he hates them so much. Is that they get to live in this world and he
Well,
can't.
he didn't actually really exist. There was the void, and they all gave part of themselves to give him a vessel, to give him a body. Yeah, and there's one scene that I really liked, which was when they go into the locations names, the Abysmal Realm, which is home for Dwarrows.
Mhm.
So in the flashback, there is a big chained, not god, but it's some sort of demon down there. They're trying to harness the power.
God, that was such a cool fucking sequence.
That artwork was brilliant.
That was so cool.
And they also have these little stone creature things that are basically slaves.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that page.
Ugh.
Yeah. There's more information about these guys in the source book.
Okay, that's cool.
The Doruk.
Yes.
Okay, I gotta get one of these books. Okay. Was anyone else... I don't know how to feel about the ending with the little stone dude.
It was a little Deus Ex Machina.
It felt a little Deus Ex.
Well, Jesus. I wish, I had read this several times to be able to spot that kind of stuff. Because there's certain things that are just hiding out in the open, according to... Well, look at the flashback when he's describing who he is.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, here are all these scenes from each of the, episodes.
Yeah, he showed up throughout the story.
He's basically like, he's like, I was every single one of these people, and you should have noticed
he was
whenever I said, your grace.
Or your grace, sorry. Yeah. I did pick up on that, and I was like, that's weird. Why are these random people referring to him as your grace?
I did not get that at all. I completely missed it entirely. And that's such a
I
subtle
didn't
little...
go back and reread. So
yeah,
if you read this all together, you would probably be better at spotting that.
I read it all together and I didn't spot it. I did think it was
you
weird.
You were more likely to spot it. You said
him.
You kind of noted that.
Yeah, I was like, why is this weird tattooed man calling him your grace?
Completely missed it. Went straight over my head. I was like,
yeah,
gone. Did not see it.
But yeah, I was expecting it to do the ending with Evander. I was expecting it to do the traditional thing where he would go on to take Tyr's place as king. But instead, he took over as protector of the fairies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he basically inherits Hakon's abilities.
Which I liked a lot more than... I liked that he didn't go back and take over the kingdom.
I liked it because all this time he's worshipped and looked up to this king. That's been like... That's always been what he wanted. And then going on this journey, he realized that what he... Like, all these stories he's heard weren't true. Like, what he wanted was not what he thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So him getting a slightly more somber, poetic ending, I liked a lot more.
And the fact that it ends on a song in a comic book.
Yeah.
I love it.
So
like
when they finally
he gets a brother
Hakon,
through the story. He has a family
because
he finds out, or not brother, but like a not blood brother. What's the word I'm looking for? Brother from another mother. Like when he finds out,
he used that.
When he finds out he's half Elver, he starts trying to bond with, or like the other Elver tries to bond with him, and he still doesn't really like it. But throughout the story,
they're both kind of reluctant on that.
But throughout the story, they do sort of establish a little bit of a bond.
Yeah.
Until, he dies.
The last second, yeah.
Yeah, and when he dies, I did laugh when his character died. And it was like, you helped me a lot. Like, without you, I never would have made it here. And then the Elver, as he's dying, he's like, yeah, we would have made it here a lot faster without you. Dead.
It would have. It was a really. It was. Get
Valko. So Vaco is his mother. Valko is the son.
Yeah. And
so in it's issue 10 where they run into Hakan again, reveals a bit of what happened.
They're in the abysmal realm, and as they're sort of escaping, a fucking dragon flies through and tries to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
so
we
reveal what happened at the Black Stairs, which is where Ultep resides. And then Hakan reveals that each of the new generation are the fruits of the old generation, and they all bear, the poisoning from Mol Utep.
Yes. Because they've got the false crown.
Yeah. So Valko is Vako's son. Evander is Tyr, son, Schiff from Skull.
Yeah, and all through this story, we've got this foreshadowing that the original heroes learn when they first faced Mol Utep, which was when you see your sins made flesh underneath the false crown, I shall return,
and
something like that.
Yeah, and they've been poisoned themselves.
Yeah.
So Cyanth is carrying, some weight. Mol Utep is sending messages to her, basically taunting her. We don't really see anything from Vako, but in the end, Vako, transforms into one of the flowerings.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're right.
And so Valko has to basically kill his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all show up at the end as flowerings.
God. Every time that they show the people and like it's their jaws like ripped off and shit's growing. Oh God. Put that on a death metal album and you've got me sold. Right.
Yeah. And then all of the other fallen heroes catch up.
Yeah.
Before catch up as well. So
before we get to the final
Tyr
confrontation, though, Hakon tries to kill them all. He's like, "You will bear the dark mark of Mol Utep. You need to die." Mm-hmm. And then Schiff basically cleanses them all because she is a vessel for the god, which is, let me get the name.
The one that is present throughout the entire series that we don't recognize.
Angluthea. No, the one. He's basically like
Loki. He's he's the trickster god.
But no, I mean, Schiff is the host of Angluthea.
Well, Doric is. She becomes the host after he passes it to her.
Welcome to Nerd Arguments.
But no, she was created as the host because main witch lady who turned fat and old, Skull, she was like, without her, you can't defeat him. She is the most powerful thing ever created, kind of thing. Because she did have the power to defeat Mol Utep, but he used Evander to take her down. Is that correct? Or am I misremembering the finale?
No, I mean, I think you're right.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in this book.
Then that little god revealed himself, the god of puzzles and tricks or something. And he basically, he used his power to heal her and bring her back. Yeah.
There's a lot of media in this for it being just a comic, which is insane. You've got a lot of involvement with the lore. It's interesting to see. I feel like this is going to become a big thing, and
I hope it's going to become a big thing. I hope it doesn't get cancelled, because I don't know how well this
I don't think it's getting cancelled.
Yeah, the afterword in the last issue makes me hopeful, but I don't know how well it sold. I really hope it continues. He seems hopeful.
Help me out here. It felt like he was implying that it's going to be open for people to come in and do their own Last God story. Is that correct, or was I reading that wrong?
So, okay, so let's jump to the back of issue 12. The afterwards, the letter. Let's see.
Because that last part in specific, it seems like he was saying that if someone comes in and they want to do their own version of this story, or a story of, within this universe, that they were able to. Was that wrong?
Hope that you return when the next journey begins.
Yeah, he said the story's not finished and may never be. Canaan is home to more races and tribes than the few we've shown you. So considering he had Dan Waters write an issue, I hope he might as well do like a Sean Murphy thing with the White Knight universe, where he will write like the main flagship series.
Sure.
And then he will let other writers play in the sandbox. So he's creative.
Yeah. He says, I can't wait to read the chapters that others tell.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, does he say that?
That's at the very end.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. That's it's right.
Implied, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not just me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not opposed to that. I actually would. I'm for it.
He gives a little hint at some of the stories that are to come as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he says,
all the different areas they could explore.
Yeah, he says, despite what the Rivermen believe, the time of dragons is not ended. In the West, Sholto and pirates tell stories of the unspeakable unmen.
Well, we know the time of dragons hasn't ended. They were attacked by a dragon.
Yeah, but that was ended up being it was a
Hakon using fairies.
Yeah,
it was an illusion.
Remember that? It was a skeleton dragon or something like that.
It was a fairy illusion, I think.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yeah, so the unspeakable unmen and what happens to the poor wretches who sail too near to their shores. In the north and east, more demigods, demons, and elementals lurk in the dark than just Norduk. And as for Tirgolad, the ferryman, and the guild Eldritch, and Eyvind, guardian of the Fae, not even our new mistress of the guild and goddess of riddles could predict what their futures hold.
Mm-hmm.
So we might get more of these characters in the future.
Yeah, it was the book of, the Tales from the Book of Ages that had the open game license in the back.
Okay.
No, this one didn't. So in the final battle, we have everyone kind of fighting against Mol-Utep, who has assumed the body of a vendor. He's basically possessed him.
Yeah.
Earlier issue 8 or 9, a vendor basically loses an arm in one of the battles. So, they're basically crawling to get to this final battle. They're near death. And then Mol-Utep assumes his body, throws an arm back. And
I thought it was that he actually still has that arm gone, but he just uses the plant thing to grow it, right?
I'm not sure.
Because
it seems more physical at the end.
Yeah, it looks like he gets his arm back.
Really? I thought that it was that when he has the Fae powers that he just is able to use that magic to
maybe at certain points it's not glowing. It looks physical.
On the last page where he sat with the Faes, he's like his left arm is armored, so we can't really see if it's glowing or what.
Yeah. During the battle, right at the end, when he's striking all these blows, sometimes the arm's not glowing. After Mol-Utep is kind of faded away, his arm's not glowing. I mean, I would believe either way that his arm is there or is not there, because we can't really see.
Yeah, well, in the very last page, it's like he does have the left arm, but it's just whether it's physical or magical, we don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, this was an incredible series. I love what it did, the way it told the two stories parallel. And the end was emotional, where we had the song with Hakon.
In a comic book.
Yeah.
It was very unique. You don't see that.
It was, and I've recommended this to my friends who don't really read comics. I'm like, you love Lord of the Rings, you love Game of Thrones, you will love this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they haven't read it yet.
There's basically an afterwards, in the back after that, basically talking about the reign of Queen Cyan.
I will need to go and read that then.
Yeah, I don't know. Is that something that's going to be like
the early reign of Queen Cyanth of Tirgolad?
The elimination of the slave trade.
Yes, it sounds like she rediscovered some of her humanity during this adventure.
Agreed.
She, allies with the Elva and Dweros.
Do the Dweros exist anymore? They were weird, fire creatures last we saw.
No, the Dwero. Maybe that was just one group of them. I'm not sure.
Maybe.
They're there if you want them to be there.
Well,
They
I'm
abandoned
looking
the
forward
Church
to
of
all of the
Wraith.
stories that come out of it.
So they end certain types of executions.
Okay. Is there anything else that we want to add to this as far as like predictions or anything else that we wanted to call out that we loved about it?
I don't really have any predictions because I feel like this could be
Anything and
the end of
everything
these
can happen.
characters. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a new world. Like, we don't know where it's going to go next. There's a lot of stories with a lot of new characters to come.
I think that it would be interesting to see a very a story that focused on Ivander and just him, taking on
That's
his new role.
interesting because he's the only one I don't want to see more of. I feel like his story was wrapped up nicely.
He could come back.
Okay.
Because
I mean,
with Shiv, she's obviously taken over the Guild Eldritch, and I feel like there's story there. Queen Cyanthe,
she had the red just burned from her hair, and now she's got white hair.
Cyanthe, while I don't think she will get her own story, I think she could appear in other stories.
The afterwards, it basically says the spinnacle of the pinnacle, the specter of the pinnacle. My bad. Is
Spinnacle
one that
of the
looms
pinnacle.
high. The role of the Guild Eldritch will play in the future of Tirgalad remains a mystery.
For a comic, there was a lot of world building and a lot still to come.
I know.
And you look at the map, and there's still areas we haven't seen yet.
Seriously.
Yeah. And one thing that changed on the map, they kind of plotted out the path that each party takes each issue. Previous paths kind of fade away, but you can see the most recent parts of the path as they go along.
Hello.
Yeah, so this area, the hinterlands, there's Shaltua Bay. I guess some of the Dweros live over there as well.
Yeah, and just above it, we've got Land of the Unmen.
I think those are also like another type of zombie.
Probably.
Yeah, they were mentioned in the afterword, and it was like they attack villagers who stray too close.
Yeah, some of the auxiliary information in some of the back matter in the issues talk about them too. They talk about Hakon. He came from the Riverlands, the far north.
Yeah, he was a Northman.
Yeah, he's some, the Fae gave him immortality, so he's been around a long time, even before the 30 years past begins.
You know what? I need to go reread this. I'm not even joking. There's so much to this that I actually got to give it way more attention.
Definitely.
Which is not a bad thing. I love this.
All right. So this reminds you guys of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Any other kind of... Have you guys dipped into any other kind of fantasy books?
Not really.
Yes. Why do you ask?
Just seeing, if we can come up with some sort of recommendations.
Obviously, like I said, The Witcher.
Yeah, I see a lot of that in this.
I have Andrzej Sapkowski's first book. I need to get the rest of his books.
Yeah, I've read that. I've read the first two, and I think I'm just not a Witcher fan.
I love it.
I tried the TV show. I didn't dig it. I'm
not that big a fan of the show.
Yeah, the game is good, but I couldn't really get into it again. And the books, there were some really good bits, and then some really weird bits where I think
the translation can be a little weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was this series of books that I read a long time ago called The Lost Years of Merlin. So it's basically Merlin as, from a teenager up through his 20s. There were like 5 books in the series. And certain things in this kind of remind me of the first series where he, teams up with a bunch of people and they explore just a small portion of, the world that he enters. He basically enters into an Avalon type world, and he basically journeys across basically the middle of this island, and there's so much more to explore. And then the following books, really go through everything else. So they basically defeat the big bad, and now there's this whole world to explore.
It's kind of funny because on the last recording that we did, I brought up N.K. Jemisin from Far Sector, but she's actually a fantastic novelist as well.
I've heard good things about her novels, but I've never read any.
The one that's been recommended to me is The Obelisk, and
I heard she's got a trilogy that's good, but I don't know the name.
The Obelisk is a part of that. N.K. Jemisin. Some sci-fi fantasy like me. I would also say, obviously, The Dark Tower from Stephen King.
Oh, I need to finish that. I've read the first two.
It's the first one is
slow.
You can tell that he spent a lot more time on that book because it's way more artistic than any of his other stuff.
Yeah. Well, it was written as 6 chapters in a magazine, or 4 chapters in a magazine, and then he rewrote it into a novel.
He took his sweet time. He usually writes a book in less than a year.
Yeah. Apparently, like the last 3 feel really rushed, which is a shame.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
It's because he wrote like 4 within like 20 years, and then he was hit by a truck.
The van, yeah.
And he was like, "Holy shit! Like I'm getting on in age. Like I need to finish this." And he churned out like the last 3 within like 2.5 years. I heard they were still very good, but there was you can tell they were sort of rushed a little.
If you like darker fantasy stories, I would recommend checking out Clive Barker. Cabal is a fantastic one that was made into a movie called The Nightbreed. It's now being made into a TV series for sci-fi. Cabal is a story of a man who searches for the land under a graveyard called Midian. It's where the monsters go. And it kind of makes fun of loosely the slasher genre in comic book or in movies. I would say that the majority of Clive Barker's storytelling is very dark fantasy.
Is this the same Clive Barker who did Hellblazer?
Yes. No, not Hellblazer. Hellraiser.
Hellraiser. Sorry.
Yeah, you're okay.
My brain's in comic mode.
Totally fine. His story was not originally called Hellraiser, but it's called The Puzzle Box Heart, something like that. I can't remember. The other story of his that I would actually recommend as far as like a dark fantasy in specific is Everville. The Everville series that he writes is very strange. It's set in a very strange time period. It starts leading into this young girl who is taken under the care of a monster when she's being hunted by a man in the middle of a snowstorm in like the Midwest in the 1800s. It's very strange. I don't know if it's 1800s. It might be the 1800s. Clive Barker is a really, really, really good detailed writer. He has very interesting themes about sex, addictions, and a lot of the human condition, but it more heavily ties into desires than anything else, I think. I can't really think of anybody else that I would recommend at that point.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to recommend either. I guess obviously the Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire books, but obviously they're not finished yet and probably never will be.
Well, he has said that if he dies, that hey, this is how I want the books to end. This is how it's going to end in my universe. Blah blah blah. He's been writing it for 20, 30 years, and he's only
first book came out in like 94.
Oh yeah, damn. So okay.
And the previous book came out in like 2011, so it's been 10 years now since the last book, and still nothing.
Have you seen the interviews with him versus Stephen King? It's really funny.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you write so damn fast?
How the fuck do you write so fast?
Okay.
And Steve, actually, yes.
He used to be.
Yeah, he was a huge coke addict. He was such a badass. Ed Brubaker wrote about this. He was doing way too much cocaine, and if you do too much cocaine, typically you try to balance out one side. Sometimes you use a little bit of water into each nostril to kind of like balance out the coke that gets up in there, but it will burn the skin, so it causes some nose bleeding and drippage. And if you do it too much, all it does is it just all starts coming out. So he's doing his work, and he's got some tissues, and he's just shoving them up in there. And he's just power writing. What a fucking badass.
He doesn't remember writing Cujo.
He doesn't remember writing Dreamcatcher, and he was on Oxycontin when he wrote that.
That was because he was that was when he got hit by the truck.
Yeah.
He was like, that book's written on Oxy with a fountain pen. Yeah. But yeah, Cujo, he's literally like, straight, I do not remember writing that. Like, it's a brilliant book. I loved reading it. I don't remember writing
like 5 minutes. Took me 5 minutes to write it. An afterthought.
Rabbit dog, bar, 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 bar. Done. They're like, oh, he's a genius.
He's like, Jesus, I just had this, angry dog earlier today, and done.
This fucking dog killed
It's
my
just
wife.
funny, like, how, like, wholesome and, like, friendly he seems when, like, he's been, like, a massive cokehead and alcoholic, like, half of his life.
Oh, they said he was, a
ships.
huge asshole back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Really?
Well, I think that was one of the stories from his wife, or maybe it was a Joe Hill story. Anecdote.
Yeah, well, I guess it was in the height of his addiction, and
that would make sense. I mean, he kind of strikes me as like the Ozzy Osbourne of like books.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's chill now. Now that
he seems like so wholesome and chill now. Like, have you seen a picture of his house where he's got like the like wrought iron fence with like the bats on it?
No.
Google his house. There's a picture of him like stood in front of it, like holding his little dog, and it's some sort of dog similar to yours.
It's a corgi.
It's like this cute little fluff ball. Yeah.
He always has a corgi. He has an Instagram account. It's mostly just his dog. Oh my god, his house looks demonic.
Yeah, and there is a picture of him just like stood in front of the gate with his little dog, and it's just such a weird contrast.
What a weird dude. I love it.
I love Stephen King.
I do too. And is there anything else that we should say about this before we wrap up?
All hail Stephen King.
All hail Stephen King. You're in the cult, Josh. You got to say it. Drink the Kool-Aid.
Do it.
Drink it. Drink it.
Do it.
Drink it.
Nah.
Drink it. Drink the fucking Kool-Aid. 900,000 dead. Let's go.
Okay.
Biggest mass suicide on American soil. Let's do it. Come on.
All right.
Cult of Comics. Cult of Comics. Cult of Comics. Cult of Comics. Google gobble. Google gobble. Cult of Comics. And on that note, I'm going to sign us off and say it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining us. You're probably watching this on YouTube, I should hope, but you're probably also listening to this on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, all the podcast places that you can find us at. My name is Tyler Brown. You can find me on Twitter at TCHBrown. Sean?
You can find me on Twitter at SeanMoore747.
And Josh is a mystery. He's a man of mystery. He's got a new subreddit that's just been made, but that's as far as you're going to go because he needs his fucking privacy. Yeah.
It's not my subreddit. It's our subreddit.
No, it's just Josh's subreddit. That's it. That's all it is, bud. Subreddit
Cult
Josh.
of Comics subreddit.
Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you like what you see, subscribe, share, give us a like, give us $1, give us a holler. Mm-hmm. Anything else you want to say, guys?
Nah, I'm good.
Go read Last God. All hail.
Oh, yeah. Nah, it's all right.
I only just did a whole episode about it or anything. Take care, guys.